Well, it's so good to meet you, Collina. I'm Janae Lewis. I'm the COMTO treasurer for the Colorado chapter. So,
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, ladies.
I work with DOTI, and I am a contract compliance coordinator.
I'll go next. I'm Isabel Martinez. I am the secretary for the COMTO Colorado chapter, and I'm a staff assistant with DOTI.
Good morning. I'm Carla Perez. I work with HDR, and I'm a senior strategic consultant. Another one of those umbrella terms.
Good morning, I'm Patience Ryder. I work with DOTI and I am the manager for the Program Resource Office, and it is kind of like an umbrella department sometimes.
Good morning, my name is Cara Sequino. I am a manager within DOTI for the Interagency Missions team, which carries out most of the vertical construction work for the city.
I'm Ray Stefani. I'm an engineering designer with Y2K Engineering. We do transportation planning and engineering design.
Welcome.
I can go. I'm Dana Lindemann. I'm with Muller Engineering on the marketing team. I actually was asked to audit the conference to see if this is an organization we wanted to join. So I'm super excited to see everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Collina. I'm Travis Bogan with DOTI. I'm a COMTO second internal vice president as well. I've heard your name quite a few times, so it's very nice to meet you.
Same here. Nice to meet you, Travis.
Go ahead. Hi, I'm Danielle Smith. I'm with Triunity Incorporation and excited to be here. I also serve on the WTS International Board. So, a partnership between WTS and COMTO is very important to us. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
I could go next. I just came in, I believe, last. My name is Consuelo Romero. I go by Connie. I have a trucking firm called Diamond and Dust Trucking, and I'm an owner-operator of a tandem dump truck. And I just recently started my business in October of 2019. I really don't know anybody in the industry, and when COVID struck, that really hurt me because I really haven't been able to market my business in the way that I had envisioned. Although I did get certified, so I do have MWBE, DBE, ESB, and I think one more. So nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Connie. You're in the right place.
I'm Justin Gilmore, Gilmore Construction. Sorry, my camera is not working with Zoom, but member of COMTO, and what we do.
And I'm Marcia Nelson, External VP for COMTO Colorado. Thank you everyone for being here. Just a heads up, it is being recorded right now. So if you do not want to be recorded, please shut off your camera. But we wanted to make sure we made this available to any attendees who were not able to make it today. So thanks again for being here. I think, do we have any more other people who would like to introduce themselves? Okay. Well, welcome to COMTO Week. Women Take the Wheel. Very exciting. It's really important. We all have been in the world of transportation, and we want to make sure that we're supporting our women in this industry. As we all know, we have small percentages of women and minorities. And so whatever we can do as an organization and as professionals to really increase that and make an impact, we definitely want to serve that. So, I don't really need to go over all of this, but of course, please be respectful. If you're not speaking, please mute your device. Again, this presentation is being recorded. If you have any questions, it's pretty informal. So I think after the panel, we will have a Q&A section. So feel free to ask your questions at that time. You're also welcome to submit them through the chat function. Just a quick agenda, a quick welcome. We've already done that, introducing ourselves here today. I want to go over a little bit of what COMTO is, or who the organization and who we are, introduction of the panel, and then the discussion in our Q&A. And let's see if we have I think we have Euless Cleckley, our chapter president, on the line, who'd like to give a few intro remarks. Euless?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking time out to participate in this event, and this panel discussion is a very appropriate one. And this is the second event that we're having as a part of our COMTO Week. Last night we had a really good session around how small businesses are responding to the current pandemic. And this particular event, which is really focused on what I think is the heartbeat of COMTO, which is really figuring out ways to help support minorities in the transportation industry, and really diversity in the transportation industry. So diversity really is ensuring that regardless of your race, gender, your philosophy about life and that there's an opportunity for you to be heard and for you to be included and for you to be supported so you can have a long-standing career. And so we, over the past 6 months or so for the Colorado chapter, COMTO really created a vision around 4 key areas, which is building or organization, organizing or organization, learning, and earning. So we say build, organize, learn, and earn. And our chapter is set up to help anybody who's a member or a prospective member to really feel that they have the opportunity to have their career be built, to have an organization that supports them, to learn more things, develop themselves as a employee, and to eventually earn their way to a fantastic career in the industry. So appreciate all the work that's gone into setting this event up and all the events for the week. And then we truly appreciate the partnerships like WTS that we've garnered to really make sure that we meet the whole essence of what this chapter is about and what COMTO is about, which is really about supporting diversity in the industry. We do have some corporate sponsors here that we always make mention of anytime we have an opportunity to have an event. So we have Diamond Level of Kiewit and RTD, Silver Level of P&H and WSP, and a Copper Level Land Acquisition Services. We also give opportunity to shout out to our board, which we have a great board of directors, Kelly from Kiewit, Carla, who's on the panel today. So she's always so there's a dynamic dual role here. We have Rusty Gonzalez from St. Andrews Construction Services, Stephen Pouliot from Michael Baker, Jeff Knight from JKS Industries, and Michael Unger from WSP. But to go back to why we are talking about COMTO Week is that really it's about exposing folks to the benefits of COMTO itself and to the chapter. And so I mentioned yesterday's event. We're a part of today's event. We have some other events throughout the rest of the week, but we strongly encourage everybody to check us out on Thursday. We have our full body chapter meeting, and you'll get some updates around some of our chapter work. And then there's going to be opportunities to become a member of the chapter. And for those of you who are in the small business community, even if you want to go a step further, we do have sponsorship programs that we are setting up that will garner you some additional benefits as you become a part of the actual chapter. And so I'm not going to go through all this, but you see a quick a snapshot of our sponsorship levels and essentially the benefits that will be included as a part of those sponsorship levels. So individually, you can become a member, or if you're a small business, or even an individual that has enough funds and means to help sponsor the chapter, that'll be great. I'll just make mention of 2 things that we're really focused on, making sure that we are providing wraparound services for some of our small businesses. So Connie, you mentioned that you just started your trucking company, and we would love for you to come in and get really engaged with COMTO because it will provide an opportunity for you to not only learn how to work with the city and the state, but you'll be made abreast of contracting opportunities on the public sector side, and you'll have an opportunity to work with other small businesses in the industry. So it's a great forum for that type of support. And then for I would say individuals plus what we're really trying to do in terms of supporting the next generation of leaders within the industry is to really help educate and expose some of our youth here locally around how great the transportation industry is and the construction industry and the city building industry is. And so we do, as a chapter, have a scholarship program where we issue traditionally about 5 scholarships per year. We're trying to grow that, especially during this time where it's very important that we train up the next generation of leaders and professionals in the industry. But also we are developing a program at the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure for the City and County of Denver, which I'm the executive director of that department. We are developing a youth education program. We are actually teaching youth really starting from middle school all the way to high school about the benefits of the transportation industry and introducing them to this new career path. And we partner with a organization called CABES to actually start off in January to have a curriculum for 4 months to teach the youth about the next and really prepare the next generation of transportation leaders. So those are just examples of youth building, business support services that we have, and then you can get all of that here at COMTO. So with that being said, I really appreciate everybody's participation and attendance today. And I think, Marsha, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Euless. It's always good to, as a male in the industry, I think it's powerful for you to be here. And so a leader in industry, a leader for the organization. So thanks for being here. And for all the women here, just know that you have an advocate for you within COMTO with our leader. So with all that being said, again, we are recorded. So, I do ask that all the panelists remain on camera during this event so that we can see your lovely faces. And I will go ahead and introduce our moderator today, Ms. Collina Beard. Collina, do you want me to read your whole bio? I mean, I can. Let's do that. So Collina Beard is an experienced transit professional with nearly 20 years service working in transit agencies from Birmingham, Alabama to Aspen, Colorado. Originally from Birmingham, Collina is currently the Director of Business Services at the Lane Transit District in Eugene, Oregon, with oversight responsibility for procurement and contracts, materials management, regulatory compliance, and business process improvements. When not championing the importance of public transit to the vitality of her community, Collina enjoys cheering on her favorite college football team, Roll Tide, and hiking and biking with her husband, Clarence, and daughter, Sarah? Yeah, pronounced Sarah. So thanks, Collina, for being here. I'm going to hand it off to you to introduce our panelists, and then we will get the panel started.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. We have on our panel a great team of women who are just coming to share all of their life experience and hopefully inspire you as you move forward in your careers. First up is Cara Sequino. She's the manager of DOTI's Interagency Missions team. Cara is a licensed architect with a master's in construction management with over 15 years experience leading design and constructing a multitude of projects types across the globe, including wastewater treatment plants, transit-oriented developments, and commercial civil architecture. Her unique experience working as an architect and as a contractor and working as the owner has broadened her perspective on all sides of the industry. So we're looking forward to hearing a great deal from you today, Cara, to our young women who are attending the webinar this morning. Next up, we have Patience Reuter, who is the DOTI manager for the Program Resource Office. Patience joined the Program Resource Office 2 years ago to lead the team and help guide them in the enhancement of the system of the capital integration system. So you're going to have to tell us what that is, Patience, for the city and county of Denver. Patience comes to us with 19 years of experience in infrastructure industry, having held roles in operational management and project controls. In her past, Patience has been accountable for financial metrics and directing activities of project controls teams within the Rocky Mountain region. Outside of work, Patience enjoys family life, volunteering, traveling, and reading with her 9-year-old daughter. We welcome you, Patience, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Next, we have Carla Perez, who is a senior strategic consultant for HDR. She has more than 30 years of experience in executive management and advisory services, specializing in transportation policy, finance, administration, governmental affairs, communications, and program development. Earlier, Carla and I were talking about the umbrella department, so she's got a little bit of everything. She gained her experience in both the public and private sector, having served as transportation policy advisor to Governor Reuter, assistant general manager for administration and RTD, and policy director for the Colorado Department of Transportation. Carla is a Denver native and attended Thomas Jefferson High School. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Colorado State University and her Master of Public Management from University of Maryland College Park. So she's bringing all of her wisdom to the team today, and so we're excited to hear from her. Let's get it started. So to our panelists, just so that everyone who's on the call this morning can get to know a little bit about you, could you share just really briefly, how did your career path bring you into the transportation industry? And we'll start with you, Carla.
I sort of came not really certain what took me into transportation. I have always had an interest in infrastructure, which I think, at one point I was very interested in pyramid, wanted to be an Egyptologist. And then with my allergies and aversion to heat, I decided that's probably not the thing I need to do. But my interest in infrastructure has always been there. When I was doing my master's program, I had the opportunity to do an internship, which led to my master's thesis on public policy and privatization of BWI airports. I was working with the Maryland DOT and really looked at opportunities there. So it kind of came about in a weird way. I really started in journalism and transportation, public relations. And so that's how I got into more governmental affairs. So it was sort of a policy connection with an infrastructure connection that really brought me into transportation the way it was. And so I came back. I'm old enough that when I was coming back from graduate school, my goal was to be part of the building of DIA Airport. That was really my goal back then. So now it's a beautifully well operating, airport, but that's really what brought me back to Colorado from the East Coast.
Awesome. Thank you, Carla. Like many of us, you have a broad experience, and we were kind of funneled into the way. Cara, would you share with us how you first came into the transportation industry?
Sure, yeah. Thank you. So I'm an architect by trade. I went to school to be an architect, and then I graduated, and I didn't want to be an architect anymore, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I decided, I don't want to waste my whole degree, and what can I do that's similar, in the same industry. And so I went and got my master's in construction management, and I thought maybe I'll work for a contractor. And then I moved to Denver for grad school, and I didn't have the degree yet, and I didn't have any experience working for a contractor. And so I found it very difficult no one wanted to hire me at that time in the construction world. So I started looking for architecture jobs because my dad said, well, you better get a job. And the only thing you have is an architecture degree. So, that's what you're working with. So I got a job as an architect at a wastewater engineering and sustainability consulting firm. I ended up loving it. And, I didn't think as an architect, any architect would love designing wastewater treatment plants, but I sure did for some reason. They're big, giant gray boxes, and they serve a very important function. So I did really like that a lot, and I was there for 10 years doing that. I realized, though, that I was never going to learn how to design anything or build anything other than a big gray box if I kept at that same firm, which I really love that firm. And so I went to work for a transportation engineering firm because that was also sort of horizontal infrastructure. And as an architect, traditionally, I think people think you should be in vertical architecture, and that was just not my path at the time. So I ended up working for this transit engineering firm and started working on a lot of projects for RTD, including Civic Center Station, which was my last project at that firm a couple years ago, and was super cool. There's also vertical element. And then I started working on civic architecture with that firm. And part of what we did was work for the city. So we had a couple projects with the city of Denver, and I started developing relationships with the people within DOTI at that time, and then decided to make a switch to come work for the team that I was working with as my client at the time. Now I manage that team. So it was quite the path, I guess you could say. And now we do, a little bit of horizontal infrastructure within my interagency missions team. And as the department, DOTI does a lot of horizontal infrastructure, but we're also, focused on vertical construction, within my department or my division as well.
Thank you, Cara. Now, for patients, if you'll share a little bit with us about how you came into the transportation industry.
Yeah, so my journey is actually really not as choreographed as others. I did not start off intending to go into transportation. I actually, when I was younger, and as a young girl, I wanted to be a pilot. And then I thought, I could fly all over. And I think that's where I get my love for traveling. And that didn't happen, but I love working with people. So I went into social work and got my bachelor's in social services. I worked with refugees from Sudan and, on the humanitarian side. And it was very challenging, but very fulfilling. And doing that, I actually met a lot of people within the United Nations that worked with refugees that came from all over the world. And I worked with people from Germany, from Asia, from name it. And that opened me up as a young graduating student, opened me up to the world. I started actually thinking, this is what I could do if I was a pilot. I would travel everywhere and help everybody. But I stuck with my social work, and I did that for a couple of years before I came to the United States to do my master's at Cornell. And again, I wasn't thinking transportation, but I started working with a small firm after I graduated that was kind of like a technology and IT company that did technology for everybody. They did technology for the city, they did technology for CDOT, and a lot of other small private companies. So I got exposed to a lot of various different industries. That company packed up and left a little bit, maybe 4 years into it, and worked with a small law firm that was not the best working experience. But within 6 months, that was a record, and I started looking for a job. I came across a small boutique kind of engineering firm called Cara Burgess then, which ended up being bought by Jacobs in 2007. But before that, maybe a couple of days before 9/11, I started working with that firm, and they did engineering. We, at that time, our biggest project was the Southeast Rail that turned into T-Rex, and that just threw me into transportation, and I loved it. I started with their finance department. And again, I call it small, but it was about 1,000 to maybe 5,000 employees throughout the country. But we did a lot of projects that were transportation. They did a lot of water and everything else. And I did work with the finance department, so I really wasn't looking for transportation department. But I touched projects that had something to do with transportation, and later on got recruited by a VP that was starting a new department within the company for power, alternate like wind and solar. Very risky because it was right after 9/11, and I'd only been with the company 6 months. But I took the risk and decided this sounds interesting. I mean, they pursued me from the finance department to go into their department, and I thought, why not? And people thought I was crazy. It's like, people are laying off, people are getting laid off due to 9/11. And needless to say, that department didn't do so well. It wasn't the right time, but I was fortunate that I had already created relationships and worked with a lot of people outside that department while I was in finance, but even when I was in the power group, that I literally just switched, and that's how I got into the transportation department. And I've done transportation and everything else since then. It's always been interesting to me, and obviously I wanted to be pilot, so that was transportation. But just the modes of connecting people has been interesting to me. In fact, when I worked with the UN agency, we used to fly the smallest, like 4-seater planes to these war-ravaged places, but there was no way we could get there because either the roads were already cut off or they were not safe. And, just thinking there was always a way. Transportation helped us connect to the people that needed the help. So,
I love that.
Yeah, so that's my journey into transportation.
I love that. I love the stories that you ladies have all shared this morning. Just to share for our general audience, this morning's webinar is focused toward high school and college students, and we do have some young ladies attending this morning from Girls Inc. So as you were listening to everybody's story, I wanted to highlight a few things, but also when we're in the industry, we often use a lot of acronyms, which is jargon. And so I kind of want to define some of that for our girls that are listening. So you heard us mention DOT, that's Department of Transportation, and the letter CDOT, you heard people, that's the Colorado Department of Transportation. That's the Department of Transportation for the whole state. You might have heard US DOT, that's United States Department of Transportation. We heard mention of DIA, that's Denver International Airport. You guys probably know that if you've traveled. Then Cara mentioned something about vertical and horizontal construction. So vertical construction is exactly that. It's like buildings and things like that. So when she was talking about the wastewater treatment plants, that kind of thing. And then horizontal is like asphalt roads and concrete and things like that. So that's that terminology. Then you've heard each one of us talk about infrastructure. And that's what the transportation industry is about. It's infrastructure. And if you think about infrastructure, that's like the skeleton, right? It's the thing that holds everything else up. If you think in your body, your skeleton is what's connecting everything, and your ligaments and muscles muscles and all of that stuff is connected to your skeleton. So if you think about transportation and the transportation industry overall, it's what connects people. Another interesting thing that I want to point out and highlight for our young ladies is if you listen to each person's story, and I'll share a little bit about my story. We started out, you have patients who started out wanting to be a pilot. You've got Carla wanting to be an Egyptologist, Cara as an architect, and what you'll see. And I was an English major, so go figure, let me just tell you. And the way that I got into transit, that's a whole long story. So I won't go into the whole long story. The short of it is, one of the things that we want to talk about today is opportunity. Patients talked about that. Cara talked about that. Carla's talked about that. Taking advantage of the opportunities. And so as we sort of pivot a little bit, I want to ask you guys about, you shared just that, just very briefly, 2-3 minutes each, about how you develop those strategic relationships. And I'll start with you, Patience, because you mentioned a vice president who invited you into an opportunity. Could you just share with us about 2-3 minutes, and then we'll go from Carla to Cara?
Yeah. So I think sometimes it may be daunting, especially if it's something new. Whether it's because you're afraid or you're comfortable where you are, but it's always an opportunity. An opportunity is an opportunity. You have to consider it. The way I deal with opportunities when I feel a little uncomfortable is I put on my analytical hat, just because I'm analytical by nature. I start thinking, what's the worst that could happen? Well, I could do this. I could lose my job. It could be the example I brought up before was really a time where everything was so uncertain. And I knew that, and I recognized it, but I also had people tell me that. And I still felt like it was something new. There was something I could learn. And I felt validated by the fact that they sought me out. And there's always the positive. You can find all the negatives, but I put that optimistic approach to it and look for win-win situations. And they always create that balance of, there's a risk, but there's a benefit. And that's how I take new opportunities.
Thank you. Carla?
I would say that I've been, the way that I've sort of approached my career and the advancements in my career have really been taking advantage of the opportunities and knowing that being able to recognize when a door is opened or a window, if it's not a full door, right? There are oftentimes people that will say, well, just give me a call, right? Or, hey, if you're ever looking or if you're ever thinking, then, or you'd be great for this job or whatever, right? Even if there's not something specific available. So what I have done over my career, and it takes, it's scary and it takes courage, right? So that when somebody says, call me, you actually call them and you say, hey, maybe we can have some coffee and explore, not always with an agenda, but there are often times in a conversation where there's a good pause and you can push what you want to ask, right? When I was working with probably the biggest one that I did was when I was working with the Colorado legislature, with Colorado Legislative Council. So I was staffing the House and Senate Transportation Committees, and we had just passed the creation of the Colorado DOT. So moving from a Department of Highways to a Department of Transportation. And the executive director for the Department of Highways, who was now going to become the Department of Transportation, said, hey, you did some really good job. I had a really good job here, some really good work. If you ever need anything, you give me a call. And it took me about 6 weeks. And then I called and I said, so were you serious? And he said, absolutely. And it turned into a job that really, I think, launched my career. And so I think it's having the courage to take people up on their offer, even if sometimes people say it casually, like, here's my card. If you ever need anything, give me a call, because you never know what can happen from it. So I think that's one thing. And then the second thing is use your networks, right? There are times when you may not even be planning a move or interested in a move, but if you're staying connected with people and if you're reaching out and maintaining those relationships, things will come up that you would never have imagined. So it's important to stay connected with people and keep those relationships going, because I think that has also been an experience of mine where things pop up and somebody mentioned something and I was able to say, I'd be interested in that. And then there you go, something will happen. So I think those are really the two, for me, the two most important things. Have the courage to follow up and make yourself open and available and recognize opportunity when it comes forward.
Cara?
Yeah, so I think I hear a little bit about myself in both of what Patience said and what Carla said. I think like Patience, I look for the positive in every situation. And so when, in terms of my career, wherever I've worked, I've thought, oh my God, this is the best job I've ever had. I love everything about it. And yeah, sure, there's this I don't like and this I don't like, but I love this. And I'm going to stay here forever. And I'm like really a loyal employee, so to speak. And so I never think I'm going to leave, and it never crosses my mind. And in fact, even like what Carla was saying about sometimes you just have to push yourself or you have to do it, like that's actually not me in terms of like taking on risk. I'm a very low risk taker. And so the times that I have moved have been because of my network. And because I had a trusting network who basically convinced me sort of to make those moves. And if I didn't have that network, I probably would have stayed designing big gray boxes forever. And I loved it. I loved it at the time, and I loved the company that I was with, and I thought I could grow there, and I saw my potential advancement, and I liked all of that. And then the transit engineering firm, I liked that too. And, and it was for my network that really pushed me. And if I hadn't had such trust in those individuals, I probably would have never made the leap. So like Carla said, having that network, and I never throw away anyone's phone number, because you never know when you're going to need it. And maybe it wasn't me making the phone call, right? But I never burned a bridge. And so I maintained relationships with people throughout the industry. And just a couple examples. When I first started as a wastewater treatment plant architect, that's not where you find and meet a lot of other architects. And so my manager at the time at that firm was very insightful. And he said, you need to join the AIA, and you need to get connected to the people who do what you do. And whether you're doing exactly what they normally do, you need to like start getting to know them, because one day you're going to need them. And I was like, well, maybe. And then I did. And I met a ton of architects throughout Denver. And I never worked with any of them, but I knew them. And I started building my network. And then eventually, when I started, having questions or needing them, or, wanting to, come across other architects in the industry, and then also maybe joint ventures and working on projects with them, or, they worked on this part of it and I work on that part of it, then your network starts building. And so without him kind of catapulting me into doing that, I would have never thought that was an organization I needed to join at that moment, because I didn't feel like that was super relevant to, and for acronym's sake, the AIA is the American Institute of Architects. And even though I'm an architect, I didn't see how I would fit into that, because they were designing cool, awesome architect-y things, and I was designing gray boxes. So I didn't think they would want me, and I would add any value to that organization. But I did it anyway, and it was really, I think, what started my network building. And then when I started working for the city of Denver, and they were my client, I started developing relationships with the very people I work with today. And when they had a position open, one individual said, you have got to come join our team. It would be so great. You can work on the owner's side. And I said, actually, I really like what I'm doing right now. I don't want to leave and change. And he said, you have to trust me. You're going to love this, and you'll get to do this, and this, and you kind of get to do a little bit of what you're still doing. And, it's so awesome, working in this industry, and you got to come do this. And so again, I trusted him and I took a chance, but without him, I would have never just like gone on the website and applied for a job on my own. I wouldn't probably have done that. But because of that network that I had, it really helped make me feel like I was supported.
So I hear a common thread with everybody. And just to share, I started in transit as an administrative assistant to an executive director for a transit agency in Birmingham. And I was just an administrative assistant. And when I say just, I was happy with my job. I operated sort of like a chief of staff in that role and was just handling things. But my promotion came from seeing another manager, a procurement manager. She always worked late. And I just asked her one day, hey, do you need some help? Can I assist you with anything? And she's like, yes. And she began to take me under her wings and taught me procurement. And ultimately, in terms of my trajectory in the transit industry, in transportation, that was the beginning, because she quit 6 months later. I stood in her position as interim, and then I got the position, and then I'm actually here today, many years later, over several other departments, because you learn. So, but the thread that I've heard through what each of you has said is, don't be afraid to take risks. Have the courage to do that. Recognize opportunities. I love what you said, Carla, whether it's a door or a window, call people back. If they say, if you need anything, call me. Don't just think that somebody said that just to say it, right? Put them to the test. And that is about building the network. Each one of you brought out building your network, getting to know each other, but also there is another common thread between each one of you. There was somebody who saw how hard you worked, the quality of the work that you did, the excellence that you provided, that said, hey, I'd like you to join our team. In working in the transit industry, I think there's a statistic that talks about the fact that in transportation, only 34% of the workforce is women. And I don't even know what the statistic is for people of color, for BIPOC. And this is the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. And so it's women taking the wheel, right? And it's about how we've made it in the industry. But I'd also like you to share a little bit about how you've been able to retain your identity, who you are as a person of color, not just as a woman, but also as a person of color operating in your arenas. And I'll let you guys volunteer. Who wants to go first on that one?
I'll go first. So I talked about creating some kind of balance for myself. I try to be open to changes, not that I don't think that every change or adoption you make is about assimilating. I feel like there are always ways to improve on something, whether it's cultural, professional, or name it. So I try to look at it that way, where, is it something that would help me? On the flip side, as an immigrant and a woman of color, I try to always embrace my uniqueness. I'm not going to be anybody else. So if it's not something that I feel will be a benefit to myself, or I don't feel the pressure to become that. And I know it's not easy, especially I think sometimes for me not be extroverted, where you just jump up and talk about everything. And for people like myself that tend to be analytical or sit back and listen before you speak, there's a pressure to get on the bandwagon and assimilate and try to be the one that acts like they know everything. Along the way, I've been fortunate enough to gain some confidence along the way that allows me to be who I am and be okay with that. Whether I feel like it's enough or not, I'm okay. I remind myself that, everybody has some strengths, and, sometimes maybe you're not the loudest in the room, but it's because you're listening, and you build trust that way. People come to you because they know you listen and care about them, and not because they know you know something. You just learn that influencing doesn't always mean the highest volume, and you're the calm when things are not going wrong. So there's always a balance of knowing yourself and being okay, even with things that you think are shortcomings. You find good out of them. So that's my way of keeping my identity and not trying to be everybody else, but what I think people need me to be.
That's good. Cara or Carla, you guys care to share?
Yeah, thank you. I like what you said, Patience. I think there are some, people, women, minority, that feel like you have to try harder to prove yourself. And, quite frankly, I've never felt like I have to try harder. I feel like I've never questioned if I'm as smart as everyone else in the room. I just know that I am. And I tell myself that. And you are smart enough, right? You made it to that room. You should you better be there then, and right. It's never crossed my mind that someone thinks I shouldn't be in that room. If someone invited me there, then I deserve to be there. And as long as, you try your best and you do the right things, and you're there for the right reason, reasons, then I feel like Patience said, like, you know, you're trying your hardest. You can't do any better than that. And so therefore, you know, you're doing just like everyone else who's at the table, trying their hardest, right? And you're always going to come across people who, you know, maybe want to put you down and for whatever reason. And I think that's a weakness of theirs. It shouldn't be internalized as a weakness of yours. And I try not to focus on it. And I don't know if that's the maybe me being too positive all the time, but I'm like, well, maybe they're having a bad day, you know, and they didn't mean to yell at me in front of everyone. And, you know, everyone's been in those situations where someone else has put you down. But I've also felt like everyone has those situations. It's not just me having that moment, you know, and so I just remind myself that, you know, everybody is worth it and everyone is smart enough to be there, and you just try really hard to tell yourself that you're smart enough to be there, right? It's not about anybody else or proving yourself to anyone else. So
thank you.
So my experience maybe is a little different, and maybe it's because I'm a little older than my fellow panelists. So when I started at the Department of Transportation, and I was fortunate very early in my career to elevate pretty quickly, but it was a pretty clear glass ceiling. You could see right through it, but it was there at the DOT. I often found myself in meetings where I was not only the only woman, I was the only non-engineer, the only Latina, the only person of color, and the only one under 30. So it was oftentimes very obvious that I was different from everyone else. And I had colleagues that made sure that I knew I was different than everybody else. I was also, though, very fortunate to have a few champions that understood that what I was bringing to the table, similar to what Cara was saying, that I was invited to the table and I was invited there for a reason. So I needed to be able to be very competent in what I was presenting and bringing to the table, and recognizing that I wanted to bring value. So it's very, like I said, very fortunate early on to have a very good mentor that helped support that conversation. I think that the whole question of assimilating is a really interesting one for me in my experience, because I am güera, so I'm fair, right? I have green eyes. You can't see them, but I do. I have green eyes. So some people often don't even see me as being a person of color, which can be just as offensive, right? So oftentimes conversations would happen, less now, but mind you, I was coming into my career in the 90s, so the early 90s. So there were often times where I found myself in rooms where things were being said, or even supervisors that would say stuff to me that could be very offensive, and they didn't even know they were being offensive, or they didn't see me as being a person of color. I'll say this, it's a weird dichotomy, but because they saw me for my competence, right? And they saw for what I brought to the table, they would oftentimes then say things that didn't realize were offensive. So I think it has then put me in the situation over the years of, do I say something or do I not say something? And when do I say something? And how do I say something? It is oftentimes where you pick and choose which battles you want to fight and when they really make a big difference. And I can say that with confidence that the large majority, I can't say always, there were times when I wish I could go back and say something, which I didn't. I've always felt that it's very important to try to stay true to self and what I believe in and what I really want to do to make a difference in this world, in this industry, and in representation of my family, make them proud of who I am. Because as you say, you stand on the shoulders of, right? So every action you take is a reflection of those who brought you there, right? And those who helped get you there, and those who are watching you and learning from you. So it is sometimes a weight, and it's sometimes what lifts you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, ladies. As we start to wrap up this morning, just in sharing, I think my own personal experience has been similar to Carla's. I'm originally from the Southeast, Alabama to be specific. And so race and who I am, you know, and the stereotype that's associated with Black people, with Black women, is something that I contend with. I am also, as a leader, I'm a strong leader. I'm very direct, but that doesn't have anything to do with Black or a Black woman. And so there are oftentimes that I've found that I've had to contend with the stereotype of an angry Black woman or any other stereotypes, right? I am more of an introvert, and I know you can't really tell this morning. I'm actually an introvert. Not really extrovert, but I've had, just like so many on our panel, I've had champions, mentors. I had a high school counselor that said, baby girl, that's not gonna do. You've gotta get out, you've gotta speak, because I would almost faint if I had to do public speaking. I had a boss who, like Cara, he told me, you've gotta join this association, you've gotta do this training, you've gotta do this other thing. And so the thing that I found is, and it's the thing that both Patience and Cara talked about, having confidence in who you are, knowing who you are, knowing that you deserve to be there. The important thing is to know you have been invited into the room. And when you've been invited into the room though, make sure that your voice is being heard, because there is a reason why you're there. And particularly if you're the only you in the room, make sure that it's your voice that is being heard. And don't be afraid. Speak up. In our last 5 minutes, I'm going to turn it back over to Marcia or Isabel to wrap us up with any last minute announcements. But I want to thank our panel. This was a good, rich discussion. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and open to us this morning. And hopefully our Girls at Girls Inc. and any of the other high school students that have an opportunity to see the recording, they are able to gain some knowledge from what we've been able to share this morning.
Thank you so much, Collina and Carla and Cara and Patience. This was really great. I resonated with a lot of what each one of you have said, being a woman of color in a very male-dominated industry myself. So thank you so much. And as Collina mentioned, we invited a number of young ladies around Denver Public Schools, Girls Inc., and Isabel, please help me with the other schools, but I hope that all of you get a chance to really marinate on what has been said today and know that you have the full capability to excel in this male-dominated industry, and hopefully we'll change that soon. So thank you, everyone. We don't want to take up too much of your time. I don't know if anyone had any questions or anything like that. Feel free to ask any.
I did see one question from the chat. It came through. It said, great panel and conversation. I'm enjoying this so much. As I was listening to the stories of how each came about getting into the transportation industry, a question came up from the ladies who come from a total different background. What are some challenges you faced coming into a total new career path, and how did you overcome them? I come from a different career path when I was introduced to transportation and would love to hear their experience.
I think I would just offer one word of advice if you're coming in from another industry. Ask a lot of questions. There is no greater opportunity than being new to something to say, well, I don't know, let me ask. I don't know, let me call. I don't know, let me talk to these people. You don't have to be an expert when you're coming in new. And that gives you the opportunity to really say, I'm learning. So what can you teach me? What can I learn from you? And I think that actually is the best way to be, to move ahead in that conversation, in that situation, is to be open.
I would add too, to be honest from the beginning about what you don't know, even at the interview, right? Like if you're at an interview to a job that you don't know that much about, because someone convinced you to do it or you took a jump and did it yourself, that's not a place to lie about what you're good at. And I am an expert in this, and this, focus on what you are good at, but don't be ashamed to say, I've never worked on this type of thing before, but I have worked on this, and this, which I feel are similar, right? Get it out right away. So that way you're not afraid to ask those questions, like Carla said, when you get to that point, when you get the job and you show up on your first day and you feel like all your questions are dumb questions, don't feel that way if you've been honest with who you're working with from the beginning, and honest with yourself. It's okay to not know everything. I mean, there are days today, I manage a team of 35 people, and sometimes I get asked questions that I still don't know the answer to. And Sometimes I make it up, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. I think that's what we'll do, and, it's not, and then I look it up, that's not the best way to operate, but sometimes you don't know the answer and it's okay. You have to look things up sometimes and ask other people and ask your resources, that will happen throughout your whole career, not just on day one. And so don't be afraid to be honest with yourself.
Absolutely. It's okay to say, I don't know, but let me look it up.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you again, ladies. I really appreciate all of your time. To our events committee, Hortensia, Isabel, and Janae, thank you so much for all the effort you've done in putting this together. I would like to close and just to reiterate, we do have local chapter sponsorships available, which really help support these programs that we want to do. And within those sponsorships, there are memberships to the national organization as well. So we will go into that explanation for you. And then we have the few other things, our Leaders in Transportation podcast. We will be releasing a few throughout the week, so please stay tuned. And then the cheerful greeting cards. Those are just basically things that you can do at home with your kids, nephews, nieces, create a few virtual cards or cards that we can put in the boxes for food banks of the Rocky to our senior citizens in emergency response kits. So with that said, thank you again, everyone. Look us up on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and we hope to see you at our next events. Thank you again, ladies. This was great. And thank you, men, for being here and supporting our women in transportation. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great discussion.
Thank you. Have a good day.